Hi, my name is Deron Coles, and I am the Executive Director of the Blueprint Foundation. I'm here with Teresa Wong, who is the Partnerships and Planning Manager of Urban Green Spaces Institute, to propose Connecting Canopies, an urban forestry initiative that brings together BIPOC community members, private industry partners, and representatives of governmental jurisdictions to change the way we plant and maintain trees with the goal to have an equitable, region-wide distribution of trees and the public health benefits they provide. We're using a community-centered approach. Yes.
I apologize for interrupting you, but we can't see you. Could you turn your camera on?
Oh, you can.
If you're willing. Yeah.
Oh, it's on.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure what's going on there. You have your video on?
My video's on and the light is green. So let's see.
There you are. Wonderful.
Oh, and there's Teresa. Oh,
All
you
right.
can see me. Oh, great.
Why don't you start over if you like?
Okay, we'll do. So my name is Ron Coles, and I'm the Executive Director of the Blueprint Foundation. I'm here with Teresa Wong, who is the Partnerships and Planning Manager of Urban Green Spaces Institute, to propose Connecting Canopies, an urban forestry initiative that brings together BIPOC community members, private industry partners, and representatives of governmental jurisdictions to change the way we plant and maintain trees with the goal to have an equitable region-wide distribution of trees and the public health benefits they provide. We're using a community-centered approach to accomplish this, and over the next few minutes, we'll explain the context, why a community-centered approach is essential, and what we've done to date that gives us confidence that we will meet our goals.
Thank you, Deron. Like many other cities across the nation, the Portland metro area is challenged with inequitable distributions of urban trees due to a history of racial injustice. The effects of past land use practices, such as redlining, are still present in many ways, including the lack of trees and green spaces in traditionally Black neighborhoods and those with lower income residents, while whiter and wealthier neighborhoods are shown to have a denser urban forest. Next slide, please. The first challenge contributing to canopy disparities across different neighborhoods is the lack of consistent urban forestry programs across different jurisdictions. Many of the jurisdictions where there are no dedicated investments in trees, as shown in the map, are also where many BIPOC and lower income communities live. Several of our government partners also expressed that there is a lack of information sharing and program syncing between different cities. The second challenge, actually, sorry, can you switch to the next slide? Thank you. Oh, sorry. Actually, the previous, sorry. The second challenge to why urban greening in BIPOC communities are so difficult. I'm sorry. I think we're using an older version of the presentation. Can you switch to?
That's okay. That's okay, Teresa. Just continue without the slide.
Okay. The second challenge to why urban greening in BIPOC communities are so difficult is also due to the lack of diversity in the green job sector. Whether it's staff representation in education and outreach work, or the white-dominated arborist in the conservation field, the lack of diverse representation poses as a barrier to overcome distrust of greening programs for BIPOC folks when they are approached. The lack of resources to help people in need to take care of trees, coupled with cities putting responsibility for street tree maintenance on residents, becomes an inequitable burden for certain neighborhoods to maintain a healthy urban forest. The third challenge is how streets are designed. Many of the streets with larger spaces dedicated for street trees are also where the wealthier neighborhoods are. In addition to historic neighborhoods, neighborhood disinvestments and redlining, policies such as putting responsibilities of sidewalk maintenance on residents have also covered a gap. This canopy disparity has led to health consequences and safety risks for our most vulnerable communities. Heat islands in Portland are concentrated in overlooked and underinvested communities. The Portland metro region has one of the most severe disparities in summer heat extremes between wealthy neighborhoods with more trees and lower income neighborhoods with more pavements. This past summer, at least 72 people in Portland died from our record extreme heat, many of them residing in areas with least canopy cover.
Our partners see opportunity in this context of pervasive inequitable systems that continue to produce inequity and who benefits from the establishment and maintenance of green spaces. Our vision is a region-wide urban forestry plan that supports justice for people and justice for the planet. Our coalition will work to ensure that less resource jurisdictions without programs or updated tree codes collaborate with well-resourced jurisdictions to help them quickly ramp up greening in those less resourced areas. Our focus on increased capacity for less resource jurisdictions will be coupled with ever more sophisticated remote sensing data from our Portland State University partners that will help us see gaps at the neighborhood level, thereby giving us the information we need to be strategic in investments in tree planting and monitoring. Further, we expect any strategy will be co-created with community members, the result being every jurisdiction working in parallel and with community to achieve an equitable distribution of trees and green spaces. The amount of work connecting canopies will identify is more than current firms have the capacity to complete. This is not only ensuring sustainability of these existing firms, but also provides incentives for them to expand, thereby opening the door for diversifying the sector. We'll take advantage of the opportunity to diversify by linking greening efforts happening across the region to workforce development programming. This gives BIPOC people living in neighborhoods to be green access to training for jobs and business startups that will also be fueled by this regional effort. Lastly, we envision the reduction in health risks and an increase in mental well-being due to the newly planted spaces. Portland is seen as green by very many people, but we can be greener. And the greener we get, the larger our contribution to the global fight against climate change. The vision I just described is a community-centered approach that adheres to the principles of community economic development. In this model, we recognize the importance of intersections of expertise. That is the coming together of expertise gathered from cultural experiences, academic endeavors, and professional work. We need all of this knowledge at the table to align greening efforts in a way that is anti-racist and leads to authentic diversification of the industry. But again, the focus here is on communities and their insights, which is the opposite of how these initiatives tend to be structured. Usually, government and industry put forward plans that the public weighs in on once the plans are at least partly, if not fully formed. We reverse that model. The blue row is where we began. We talked with BIPOC leaders about their priorities as they relate to community development, community health, and economic development. We use their insights as the foundation of the Connecting Canopies model. We then introduced the model to industry partners and refined it based on their needs before pitching it to representatives of governmental jurisdictions to identify shared goals and the collective impacts we could achieve if we all committed to working together. Those impacts are shown in the bottom right and correspond to the vision I previously presented. So we've made great progress so far. We've completed all the tasks on this process map, and we have a committed group of partners to show for it. And here's what we committed to. We committed to maintaining momentum with a steering committee that uses insights from the group to determine topics for quarterly symposiums. From the symposiums come task forces comprised of those same community members, industry partners, and governmental representatives. These task forces align with the high priority and high impact tasks we identified as a collective. Best of all, by working together, we raise the capacity of all organizations to create systemic change. We also recognize that individual organizations might have internal work to do that they can complete alone or with help from the group. but whether it is a task force or individual organizational work we're speaking of, we remain transparent by sharing data. And that's data including lessons learned and unresolved challenges that the partners want to unpack during future symposiums. This data goes right back to the steering committee. Yes.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry, but I want to make sure there's time left for question and answer. We have about 7 minutes left, so just when you're ready.
Awesome.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So that goes right back to the steering committee to inform just-in-time learning and working sessions that center community while maintaining momentum. So that's it. That is our model for growing healthy air in Portland. We hope that this model can be replicated elsewhere. I also hope that we can coordinate with the folks in Denver. That sounds like they have a really cool and similar project. And we hope that you will help us all by funding the effort. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Evaluators, feel free.
Hi, Darren. Thanks for your work on this. I'm Sadhu, and love your city, like all the great cities we've heard from today. I'm curious on the BIPOC stipends. I'm just maybe you could elaborate a little bit more on, like, who are they? Like, how does that whole system work?
Yeah, so Blueprint Foundation has been shifting away from the volunteer model, and we feel that the expertise that community members are bringing is similar to consultants that folks will line up for their projects. And so when we're recruiting community members, we let them know that they'll be paid as consultants. And so their level of engagement is up to them. So maybe they only have enough, let's say they have enough time to be involved in one task force. Any work that they do, they keep track of their hours, and they submit invoices to us to be paid at the $50 an hour rate. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, and what kind of work are they doing?
Yeah, and so when we're recruiting, we have sort of roles that they could play, and it's up to them what role they want to play. So maybe they are a community member that is just interested in connecting their community to green spaces, and they don't currently have green spaces in their neighborhoods. So they're coming on board as advisors for the group, saying, this is what our community needs. These are the types of trees that are not in the tree codes that should be there because they're, for example, culturally relevant to us. And so they're there and being paid to give those insights to the group. We could also have folks that are BIPOC community members that are interested in entering the sector, so doing urban forestry as a job. And so they're involved to let us know what the barriers are to employment, what the barriers are, or what needs to happen in workforce development programming. And then, of course, to participate in that workforce development programming so that they can meet their goals. We also have another role that has to do with business ownership. And so we're connecting those folks to people like the Portland Fruit Tree Project and Friends of Trees to not only gain experience planting and maintaining trees and doing arborist work, but also learning about the business side of things so that they can start their own business. And we are pooling together seed money for those folks that do want to start their own business and use a cohort model to do that so that they're more likely to succeed. Teresa, did I miss anything?
Yes.
No, you explained it pretty well. I would also add that, we want this to be an organic outreach process. So any of their efforts spending on outreaching and spreading the word to different communities, we're also paying them for that work.
I have a question kind of similar to the questions for the Denver team, which is sort of how are you prioritizing neighborhoods or, you guys are sort of looking at this at a citywide level, but how are you prioritizing sort of the initial phase? And then also how are things working with the city of Portland, right? Because it's an important stakeholder around policy work. So curious about those two things.
Would you like to start, or should I?
I can start and then you can add on too. So right now we are also, one of our core partners is also Dr. Vivek Shandas from Portland State University. So he does the analysis through science-based methods, determining which neighborhoods and which census blocks has the lowest canopy cover with the highest concentration of BIPOC and lower income communities. So we're using a more objective way to prioritize which neighborhoods are the most in need. In addition, we also are incorporating cultural and community expertise from community members who are giving us feedback. So using both approaches. And so far, we are also partnering with Dr. Vivek on not just within the city of Portland, but across the Portland metro region. So to expand that decision-making tool to the wider region. And in addition to, so the second part of your question is, right now we do have City of Portland on board as one of our partners, and several other city jurisdictions who are also doing a lot of work in terms of reaching their climate goals. So we're hoping that this can create kind of also a cohort model as where City of Portland, who has way more resources in terms of financial program, can also share their resources with other cities that has less financial and program and staff resources. And I'll let Deron add to that.
Oh, I think you covered it all, Teresa. That was great.
Thank you.
We may have time for one more question. Anybody else have one?
I just have a comment. I love the pipeline and development of youth, Black, Indigenous, and people of color youth into this sector. I really appreciate that.
Oh, certainly.
Thank you.
And the project has already helped Blueprint Foundation do more in that area. Speaking of Portland, when we were bringing them on board, they mentioned, oh, we have all these open positions that if this had already been started up, we would be able to diversify our pools. And so I said, hey, you're a new partner and we can get moving on that now. And so I reached out to Oregon State University and to TRIO programs there. I used to work for one at OSU and at PSU. And now we are doing a pipeline from TRIO programs to these positions so that the academic counselors can not only say, oh, here's a position description that's open. Often we don't apply for those things because of fear or whatever. So now those counselors will talk to them directly and diversify those pools starting next month. So we're really excited about that part of the pipeline too.
That's awesome. And the fact that you're compensating them, because oftentimes, people of color cannot take advantage, in my experience, of these types of internships in the field because, it's unpaid. And sometimes we don't have just the ability to just do stuff and not be paid for it. So thank you for that.
You got that right. Yep.